My parents threw me out in high school over a nasty false rumor. Years later, they spot me on TV and come running with demands, but this time I have the upper hand. I will only help if they accept my unthinkable condition. I have a twin brother and I am 28 years old. My twin brother and I received rather different parenting styles when we were children. For some reason, my parents honestly appeared persuaded that my brother was destined for greatness and that I was the black sheep since I preferred to play sports and make new friends over academics. They were often making comparisons between us which was discouraging and damaged my self-worth from an early age. When I was a kid, I had to watch my brother and his friends get lavish birthday parties while I was ignored. While I was never even permitted to invite my friends back to our home, he frequently had sleepovers with his pals. I hated every second of my childhood, to be honest. My grandma was the only family member who appeared to be concerned about me. She usually brought my favorite chocolates when she came to visit and sometimes she would sneak me a few bucks so I could indulge myself later. This obvious preference for my twin brother grew over the years, eventually turning into emotional abuse aimed at me. My parents used to publicly make fun of my grades and my interests. It seemed like I would never be able to live up to their ideal of the ideal child, no matter how hard I tried. Despite my athletic prowess, they forbade me from engaging in extracurricular activities because they wanted me to focus solely on my education, much like my brother as a youngster. It was frustrating and I felt powerless. Later, during my sophomore year, I was grounded once again for using Snapchat on my phone. Apart from using this program to keep in touch with my pals like most teens my age, I had done nothing illegal at all, but since my parents had prevented me from talking to my friends, they felt that this was a serious crime and a betrayal of their confidence. They lost it all and scattered my belongings all over the place after removing my doors from their hinges. They informed me that I would not be able to live in solitude as long as I shared their roof. My twin brother didn't help me as I was seeing my parents mistreat me. On the contrary, he made things worse. He was able to take advantage of the poisonous atmosphere that our parents' unfair behavior had created. He developed a habit of fabricating stories about me and accusing me of crimes I never committed, in order to get away with everything. He might easily assign responsibility to me if he stole something, and my parents, who were already inclined to think the worst of me, would believe his falsehoods. He used to make fun of my appearance and insult me in front of my schoolmates. In spite of this, I was friendly and willing to socialize, so I had a large group of friends in school. However, my twin suffered with social anxiety and began to feel resentful that I was able to talk to people while he felt uncomfortable as an introvert. When no one came up for him at our 14th birthday celebration, this jealousy boiled over. On the other hand, my friends took me out for ice cream and I had a great day altogether. I'm not sure why his friends did it to him. My brother was much more enraged by this. My brother started spreading untrue stories about me at school, calling me a spoiled brat as a form of retaliation. He made up the story that I was physically assaulting him at home and told everyone about it. Unbeknownst to me, he pushed things to a worrying degree to falsify proof. Since our parents loved him more, he would intentionally cause injuries to himself, such as a black eye or bruised shoulder, by punching himself. When our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would fabricate tales and proudly show off his self-inflicted wounds as evidence of my alleged aggression. Lying, he would blame it on careless pursuits like playing football with his pals. People started to believe his twisted version of events as lies, and his said black eyes gained popularity. Not very long after the rumor began to spread, even my friends started to treat me suspiciously. I initially noticed small adjustments. Friends who used to hang out with me in the corridor abruptly stopped talking to me. Invites to get-togethers for drinks dwindled in frequency. People were reluctant to connect with the purportedly pampered girl who was accused of aggression. As if a switch had been flicked, I finally plucked up the bravery to ask my former best buddy why our relationship had soured. She revealed that my twin brother had been spreading false information about me. She exposed the specific falsehoods he told everyone, making false accusations against me that I had never committed. She said something that surprised me. It seemed as if the ground gave way underneath me, a mixture of bewilderment and betrayal. Growing up, I lived with my brother who was spreading false information about me and accusing me of things I would never even consider committing. I had a knot in my gut and a heavy heart because of the deep-cut betrayal that day. After school, I addressed my brother but he decided to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he gave me a smug look and said I was worthless. His lies and actions were beginning to frighten me so much so that I was at a loss for words. I was scared that my parents would think more of my brother than of me. When I wanted to talk to them, it hurt to be alone, especially because I'd always been kind to new people. It seemed as though the relationships I had cultivated over the years were being destroyed by my brother's falsehoods laced with envy. Teachers started to hear about the rumors as well. I got the strangest feeling like I was in another world where my own twin's false narratives were more important than who I really was. The falsehoods were becoming more than just adolescent gossip, they were influencing people's real perceptions of me. My biggest worry came true when the unpleasant gossip soon got to my principal. I was brought into the principal's office right away, along with my brother and our parents, to talk about these said rumors. Heart palpitating, I sat there as the principal insisted on the facts. I thought my brother would at last tell the truth, but he continued to tell lies. He informed the principal directly that the stories were accurate and depicted me as a bully who would beat him up when his parents weren't there. It was too good to be true. My brother kept telling this bizarre tale about how I was upset with him because our parents were showing him more affection. As he did, shock overcame me. He clung tenaciously to his tale even though it was all a falsehood. As my brother told his story, my mother started crying and clinging to him like a hero. My dad made an effort to console my brother by telling him that speaking out was brave and that he would make sure the worst never happened to him. I attempted to justify myself after that day, begging the principal that it was all in my head. Despite my frantic attempts to rise from what felt like an overwhelming sea of allegations, my brother persisted that I was just an angry, aggressive person venting my emotions on him on a daily basis. With accusatory glances in her eyes, my mother's tears did not stop as she grabbed onto my brother. It seemed like I was up against a wall of my brother's invented narrative. I received a severe rebuke from my principal, who said that I may expect to be suspended because the school did not allow bullying. He shook his head and said he couldn't just let it go despite my pleas that he not suspend me. I tried to convince him that I hadn't done anything to harm my brother, as I pleaded with him, tears rolling down my cheeks. In order to set a bad example for others and discourage them from bullying others, the principal sternly informed me that I would be suspended for 10 days. It really got to me and I began to cry even more, pleading with him to think again. I was pulled out of the principal's office by my parents, who were upset and ashamed about the whole thing. I was averse to leaving. They were not buying into my attempts to explain myself and convince them of my point of view. With a heavy heart from embarrassment and frustration, we departed the school. After we arrived home, everything changed drastically. Suddenly, my dad started packing my belongings. I was unaware of what was going on and was astonished and perplexed. He simply yelled that he couldn't allow me to live in the same house as my brother any longer. When my mother asked him what he was doing. Update. I was sobbing almost to the point of tears and begging my brother to be honest with them, but he remained detached and unfazed. After finishing the packing of my belongings, my dad dumped the suitcase into our entryway. I continued to beg my dad not to kick me out as I grabbed onto his leg like a nightmare coming to life. He informed me that a bully like me had no business living in his home and that if my grandma wanted to come get me, he would arrange for her to do so. It seemed as though everything had collapsed underneath me. I was shocked to find myself ejected from my own house and surrounded by my possessions strewn over the entryway. My grandma did eventually appear. She collected everything I needed, helped me get it into the car, and got me settled into the passenger seat. She checked to make sure I fastened my seat belt before proceeding to my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and as soon as my dad answered, she began berating him for mistreating me. She was determined to tell him that what he had done to a youngster like me might have him locked up. So if he ever came near me or attempted to get in touch with me again, she wouldn't think twice about calling the police or CPS. In an effort to shift the responsibility, my mother informed her that it was her fault, but my grandma would have none of it. She remained firm, protecting me and stating that I was only a young child and didn't deserve to be handled so callously. For the first time in my life, I experienced my grandmother's power in contrast to what my parents thought. She trusted me and didn't cow down to them. After a while, we got in the car and left my house behind, the only place I had ever lived. I have no idea how to express the unfathomable anguish I was experiencing at the time. I recall not eating anything even though my grandma begged me to, and instead I simply cried on the bed. She was astounded when I told her what my brother had done. She told me she thought I had a good narrative, and I felt relieved to have one person on my side at least. The thought of going back to school after the 10 days of suspension ended was like walking back into a lion's lair. The looks on my students' faces as I walked down the well-known hall said volumes about them: sidelong stares, murmurs, and judgment. The bogus allegations weighed heavily on everyone. My brother, meanwhile, pretended that I didn't exist and openly disregarded me. He had made friends with a few people who bought into his tale, viewing him as the innocent victim of my attacks. I tried telling everyone my side of the tale, but it was always met with silence. I was a misfit, marked with a false identity that hung over me like a shadow everywhere I looked, in the cafeteria, the classroom, the hallways. I saw contempt and suspicion in the eyes of those around me. I started to isolate myself. I used to focus on going to all of my courses, eat lunch by myself in the cafeteria, and then head straight home. I didn't have any friends, and I got the impression that nobody really wanted me there. Not once did my parents give me a call to see how I was doing during this whole ordeal. My grandma would tell me over and over again that this was nothing to do with me and that everything would work out in the end. After earning decent marks in high school, I was eager to start college in the hopes of leading a better life. I never really knew what independence felt like until I moved away to attend college. It was my first time without an observer behind my back. Nobody was attempting to outperform me or compare my grades to others. I made acquaintances with like-minded folks after meeting them. I focused on moving past my fames and my friends' mental and physical wounds from the years and making the most of my college experience despite the damage they had caused. It was around this time that I realized how good I was at writing content, though I wasn't sure if it would be a long-term career path. I had always wanted to be a writer. I thus made the decision to give up on my ambition, but I also started writing for pay as a freelancer. I joined a number of freelance websites which helped me land contracts with well-known companies. I began gradually compiling a portfolio of my work in this manner. I continued my side business throughout college and never once approached my parents for money. After graduating, I realized I could pursue content writing as a full-time career rather than working for a corporation because I had several clients and established professional ties with them. I was able to be involved in a number of projects and was doing really well. In addition to providing me with financial independence, having a successful freelance profession enabled me to live and travel as a digital nomad. Traveling was undoubtedly difficult, but it helped me get past my past. I invested in myself and saved as much as I could. I have seen a lot of the globe over the years, but there is still a lot I have not seen. Throughout it all, my grandma was the only person I thought of as family, and I loved her to pieces. Although she was devastated when I moved out, she recognized that I had to become self-sufficient. I would always make it a point to be there for her no matter how busy I was. On the weekends, I would go see her and we would frequently have meals together or just sit on the porch and talk about everything from recent events to childhood stories. I used to spend whole weekends assisting her with housework or going for long walks with her at the neighborhood park. I recently completed one of the most significant initiatives of my professional life. I was really fortunate to write blogs and product descriptions for a business that I am unable to name. I asked the team I worked with to post favorable evaluations on my website when the job was over, and they were more than pleased to comply since I was aware that collaborating with this brand was really important. I then collected photos of a few of their reviews to share on Instagram. As was to be anticipated, a number of other content writers got in touch with me to wish me well in my career and even shared my tale to encourage others to read it. That's how I started receiving messages from random people who were in need of website assistance. Several of my relatives contacted me to congratulate me after noticing this as well. Eventually, my former principal got in touch with me upon realizing how successful I was. He got in touch with me and asked me to speak at a lecture at the college to students about launching a content writing profession. Since I struggle with public speaking, I was really anxious, but I chose to take a chance and consented. It seemed like my life had gone full circle. While I was sharing my experiences and insights in front of interested people during my speech, I discussed my challenges and how I persevered through all of the difficult times to support myself. Honestly, helping to strengthen the community of writers and encourage others was a really rewarding experience. A few of my videos went viral on Facebook groups because they struck a chord with people. Having my hard work finally acknowledged made me feel fantastic. I received an invitation to talk on a local news program last week. They asked me to share my experience and ideas with their audience on a show they were doing about the advantages of content writing. I was thrilled about the chance, even if I was a little anxious. I discussed my experiences, the value of customer testimonials, and how a straightforward message of gratitude may lead to amazing possibilities. Throughout the event, it was both humbling and thrilling to have the chance to encourage more people in the profession and speak to a larger audience. I was honored to be invited to a TV show, so I posted some of these snippets on Instagram. When it eventually aired, this is how my cousins and family first learned about my professional success. You see, my parents were unaware that I was doing work for well-known businesses and receiving invitations to TV shows as they never discussed me with anybody. This is how my family's message got around rapidly.